Hi, this is Rabbi Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Thank you, everybody. And whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah anytime, or wherever you watch or listen to your podcast, as always, it's wonderful to have you along. And do not forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. all them stuff. Okay, and we are sponsored this episode by Anonymously. Thank you. And I'm thanking you in advance for your very warm words. I don't know why you didn't want to share who you are, because people usually are anonymous when they write nasty comments to me, which I spoke about a few podcasts ago. And I need to do a rejoinder to that podcast. But let's get down to the business first. I gained tremendously from your podcast each week. I really need to read some of the positive comments, because there are many, many, many more of them than the negative comments. But negative ones are just more fun to read. It's hard to believe that Rabbi Orlofsky Show doesn't have a year's worth of sponsorship lined up. Yeah, it is hard to believe. The Frum world needs more of the frank, honest analysis of Torah ideas, societal issues, and easy to digest Mussar that the Rav discussed in the podcasts. Thank you. I guess that's why we don't have so many sponsorships, because the people who appreciate it don't have any money. All the rich people like to go to the more established, but we're for the people. We're for the people who are not, in the inner circle. It's like when Rabbi Yaakov Horowitz, they asked him about the state of Klal Yisrael. So he says, it's like a chasana. He says, if you're in the middle circle with the chassan, it's unbelievable. If you're in the next line waiting to get into the middle circle, it's great. When you reach the third line, he says, that's where I am. That's the old people shuffling along, doing due diligence. He says, but then there's the people sitting at the tables, they're not participating at all. And I added two caveats. Then there were the people outside smoking and talking on their cell phones. And I pointed out that they're concentric circles. With each circle, it gets bigger and bigger. So the happy campers are in the middle. My people are shuffling along with me. The third line. Anyway, but thank you so much for that. And I also would like to give a shout out, of course, to Dan Roth and his brilliant work with Torah Live. Those of you who are not aware, it's on El Al. You can watch the Rabbi Siddur videos. For those of you who didn't see my episode with Rabbi Roth, I encourage you to watch it, because I am also a cartoon character. And there was never anybody who was more meant to be a cartoon character than I am. And Torah Live, Rabbi Roth asked me to mention that if you mention you are from the Rabbi Orlofsky Show, you'll get a 10% discount if you sign up for Torah Live. And then you'll get access to videos that are not on the public domain. You'll get to be able to participate in all kinds of other programs and things. So if you've got a young person or an older person who enjoys the Rabbi Siddur material or any of the Torah Live material, I encourage you to please go check that out. There's a link at the bottom of your page where you can sign up for it. And as I mentioned a few podcasts ago, I read the unpleasant comments that I received for my interview style. I wasn't doing that to be, as my children say in Hebrew, nechiti. Nechiti is like you're being nebuch, those things are so terrible, you're such a nebuch, I wasn't doing it to do that. I was doing that to explain my interview style. Whether or not people appreciate it or not, I just wanted to point out that there's a method to the madness. I'm not just interrupting. And in fact, I just got a interesting email where a person said, I listened to the interview and I also was disturbed by the interruptions. And he says, and since I've listened to it 4 times, and now I understand what you were trying to accomplish. Baruch Hashem. I don't know that everyone always appreciates what I'm trying to accomplish. I have being a well-known unof, and probably modesty is my greatest trait and among my great traits. But, I always try, as the great Bali Mussar did, to, be besacer and to cover up my greatness. So I don't like to, reveal what I'm doing all the time. I like to appear as simplistic as possible. This does two things. One is it protects me because my friend Rabbi Nissel told me that sometimes people say, oh, you're friendly with Orlofsky. He's very funny. He does a lot of good jokes and things. And he says, no, but he also knows how to learn. He says he's been through Shas a few times, he gives a daf yomi, he knows how to learn. He says, when I tell this to people, they get angry at me. And I don't know why. And I said, I'll tell you why. As long as they can write me off that the guy's just, funny, so I'm not a threat to them. But when they think that I can also learn and also be entertaining, then what have they got over me? And it's very important to put other people down. That's how you raise yourself up, is by putting other people down. So that's why I don't like to let people see that, because I know that, it becomes more threatening to people. I give a Motzi Shabbos shir in Har Nof, and over the years, the old days I used to get hundreds of people. Now I don't, but I used to get hundreds of people. Although they put it up on Torah anytime, and I get thousands of people. So I guess even though they're not there in person, but you do get more of an energy when there are thousands of people in the room as opposed to online. But there were people who were upset that I drew this kind of an audience. And what was interesting is sometimes when I would go on a tour and I'd be traveling, I didn't want to stop the shir, and I would invite in other famous speakers to fill in while I was gone. And they said they didn't get the turnout that I got. My people wanted to hear me, and from time to time, somebody would come over to me, and it happened several times, and they'd say, why are you giving this shir? You're such a big Talmid Chacham. You know more than everybody else, that you give such a big shir. I should be giving that shir. I know more than you do. So I say, no, it's because I'm funny. Oh, you're a clown. You're a joker. You tell jokes. You're a comedian. Oh, I didn't understand. Okay, now I understand. They're coming to watch a comedy show. I thought it was a shir. No, okay, now I understand. Now I understand already. You're a joker. Okay, you're a clown. Okay, now I feel better. And one time when this happened, one of my kids were with me, and they were seething. And they said, but why don't you say something? And I said, do you know how sad your life has to be? That you have to go up to somebody that you don't know and attack them because they have an audience? Right? What I should have said is, why don't you give a shir? Why? Because nobody will come, because nobody wants to listen to you, you stupid balgaiva. Nobody wants to hear what you have to say. But what am I doing that for? He's already a stupid balgaiva, so now I have to go and point it out to him, Let him put me down and walk away and feel better about himself and have a certain amount of self-respect. So I don't need to tout how great I am already, And that's why it was interesting. I used to have people who would come to the shir. One time a guy says, I couldn't make it. I listened to the recording. He says, and I didn't realize it. You say a lot of deep things. Meaning was I wasn't in the energy of the room and everybody laughing. I was listening to what you were saying. You say a lot of deep things. I said, what are you trying to do? Kill my parnasa? Just say I'm funny. That's what people want to hear. People don't pay me money to say deep things. People pay me money because I'm funny, And that's why somebody once said to me, you're not allowed to, charge for Torah. How come you charge when you speak? I said, I'm not charging for the Torah. I'm charging for the jokes. I speak in America. I get a certain amount of money when I speak. And, I have to have a certain number of jokes. So sometimes I would tell a joke at the Shabbos table, and my kids would say, but that's not funny. And I'd say, remind me, how much do you get paid to say jokes? I don't think you have any idea what's funny. I'll tell you what's funny, I said, okay, granted, not every joke is a $500 joke, you know what I mean? I only need a few of those and I could finish, I said, but you fill in, you put in enough jokes so you reach the amount that I'm getting paid, So after that, when I would tell a joke at the Shabbos table, one of my kids would be like, that's about $2.50. That's $2.50, Dad. Sorry. That's $1.25 joke. Because not everyone can do everything, but everyone can criticize. Anyway, the point I was making is that I was reading the negative comments to point out that there were people who did not appreciate why I do what I do. Now, you can agree with that and you can disagree with it, but that's my style of interviewing because I want to try to get out of the people what I want to get out. And in fact, I received a lot of, don't feel sorry for yourself emails and comments. And I don't worry about it. I'm very impressed with myself. I couldn't be any more impressed with myself. Don't worry about it. I get introduced sometimes, and that's why I have told my kids many times. I've told my wife, I've told my kids, I've told anybody who will listen, I don't want any hespedim when I die. For a lot of reasons. One is the Gemara talks terribly about people who lie. And either people are going to lie about me when I die, or they're going to tell the truth, and it's just going to be a bizayon. So let's just not say anything. I said, but besides that, most people need hespedim because they never get maspid. I get people are maspid me all the time. Every time I get up to speak, I get these over-the-top introductions that are just like ridiculous, And Moshe Feinstein used to get these tremendous introductions, and when he got up to speak, he just didn't even acknowledge it because it was like, yeah, okay, But it's a little embarrassing when you get a big one. I remember Dovid Cohen once got this really over-the-top introduction, and he gets up and visibly choked up, and he says, I just wish my parents could have been here to hear that. He says, my father would have enjoyed it, and my mother would have believed it. So there's different kind of responses. But one of the things I say is, wow, after that introduction, all I can say is, I wish that I was you sitting in the audience listening to me, because what could be better than listening to somebody like that? Wow, I'm so impressed with myself right now. I don't need any hespedim, so don't worry about it. All the nasty comments, I enjoy reading the nasty comments. All of them, are taken. It's one of the memches dvarim the Mishnah mentions. You want to hear reproof, but this isn't reproof. This is just, either criticism or insults, and that's fine too. That's fine. That's I only grow from the experience. It helps me develop my anavi even further than if you can even imagine such a thing as possible. But I basically wanted to explain it. I got one very curious email where the person says, I hear your explanation, but maybe you should speak to Adas Torah first. And I said, about what? Hilchas interviewing? I didn't know that was a siman in Shulchan Aruch. What exactly is the halachic issue I'm supposed to be clarifying? Should you ask the question like this? Should you do it like that? How should you be sitting? What's your lighting? This is my style of interviewing. And that's why I pointed out, and somebody wrote, which I found interesting, he goes, I understand what you're saying. After your interview with Nissim Black, I finally felt like I knew who he was. And I had listened to all of the interviews that he had done. But now I finally felt like I understood who he was. So that's it. I was explaining. I was not hurt. I'm not insulted. Just the opposite. I tell you the truth, that I'd have to make a cheshbon. It's definitely dozens. I would go so far as to say scores. I don't know if it's hundreds, but definitely scores of wonderful comments and emails I get from people who tell me how much chizuk they get from this show, as Anonymous mentioned in his sponsorship. That gives me such chiyus, and sometimes people come up to me. I was just in America because my daughter had an operation, and Baruch Hashem, she's recovering. Somebody asked, why don't you give the name so we could daven Yafa Nomi Bas Sima, if you want to throw in a good word for her. She could always use tefillas. And I was there, and, I took my daughter out to eat to the finest eating establishment in the 5 towns, Carlos and Gabby's. And, They have these dumps like Doma and stuff, but I don't go to those places, Carlos and Gabby's, that's where you go. Anyway, and apparently everybody in the restaurant listens to the Rabbi Orlofsky show. We just went around, I went to visit my mother-in-law in Lakewood, and she... I went to Daven Mincha Ma'ariv in a minyan. I was surrounded by a group of Lakewood guys who all listen to the podcast. So I know there are people who get chizik from it, and I get these emails of people, who get the chiyuv. So the nasty comments, are the exception rather than the rule. And like I said, maybe one time I'll come in and read all of the nice comments that people make, and mostly because I'm totally out of ideas of what to talk about. So that seems like as good an idea as any. I often come into the podcast and ask, so what should I talk about? Because we're well into our seventh year. Good God. We're well into our 7th year of Rabbi Orlofsky, and I've been talking for hundreds and hundreds of hours, and you think at some point this guy has to run out of stuff to say. Apparently not. I always find something else, but it doesn't always occur to me off the top of my head. I am not a mind hamsgaber like some people are, that they're just overwhelming. When I was by my daughter who lives in Far Rockaway, I daven at the White Shul. I give an online Mesilas Yesharim, which of course you can sign up for at my website, rabbiorlofsky.com. And normally when I give it in Israel, it's on American time, so it's 2:15 in the afternoon. But in America, that's 7:15 in the morning. And the way that Nate's works, you can't go to an earlier minyan, really, if you want to daven after Nate's. So so I go to the 8:30. I finish the shir after 8, and get myself together and drive down to the White Shul. I go to 8:30, and the Rav of Eitan Feiner davens there. So I just had the schus of giving him a shalom aleichem when I was there. It's not easy because he davens for a very long time. I had to hang around for a long time just to go over and give him a shalom aleichem. But I remember when I spoke in the White Shul years ago, and he gave me an introduction, and I got up to speak, and I said, "You heard more sources in that 5-minute introduction than you're going to hear in my entire speech." He's a mayim gabe. He just keeps producing, and he is a wonder of our generation, And Rabbi Feiner, if you ever happen to be in Eretz Yisrael, we would love to have you on the show, because I can't think of anyone finer in the state of Carolina. Anyway, yeah. So, okay, well, that was just, I'm waiting for the Ritalin to kick in. This was just my ADD taking me all from topic to topic. So that's it. So thank you for everybody for the nice comments. Don't worry, I'm not being nechiti. I'm not insulted, I remember at one point I've been killed on the internet 3 separate occasions, and you read the comment sections, and the comments are often just vicious, really vicious comments, And one of my kids said, but don't read them. And I said, no, it's good for me. It's good for me, Read I'm a mamzer, I'm a molek, tzarech b'dika acharav. He has a din of moisi. Everyone should go out and kill him and stuff like that. I find these things inspiring, that I could inspire this level of loathing among people. I'm a pretty nice guy, more or less, but this level of hatred, I find it, calming, In the words of Tom Lehrer, who used to write funny songs, professor of math, in one of his songs, he says, lurid, licentious, and vile, make me smile. So, yeah, that's okay. It's good. Reminds me of, they tell a story that before World War II, this guy was reading the Stürmer, which is the Nazi propaganda piece. And he sees this Yid reading the Stürmer. He says, "You're reading the Stürmer? Why would you read that?" he says, I can't read the Jewish newspapers. He says, why? He goes, the Jewish newspapers, everybody hates us. Everyone's going to kill us. Everyone's going to do terrible things. I read the Shturma. The Jews run the world. We're the most powerful people. With this and next thing. I get a lot of chiyas from it. The only people saying positive things about us are the Nazis. So that's why all the negative comments, the fact that I can inspire that. In fact, I'll tell you an interesting word that I heard years ago from a well-known Baal Mussar. He said, you know, Ammon and Moab can never marry into Klal Yisrael. And the reason they can never, I'm almost positive I heard this from Rabbi Coulter. I'm almost positive he was Rosh Yeshiva in New Haven at the time, and he used to come to our NCSY events. Originally, somehow he thought he was going to recruit, you know, Bachram for his yeshiva. After a while, when he got the lay of the land, he just came because he saw, wow, what an opportunity. These are the nicest kids in the world that have a chance to be mashpia. So, you know, a shout out to the Coulters, who, when I would go to America, they would always host me wherever they went. As they went from city to city, I would follow them around. You know, I just stayed with them recently in Boca, and they hosted me and my daughter, my grandchildren. You know, and Mrs. Coulter, whenever I walk in the door on one of these trips, the first thing she does is hand me a large pile of vitamins and say, "Quick, take these." Apparently, I always look like I'm dying. You know what I mean? So, which, by the way, I am. But you know, the only question is when. But I have embraced my own mortality. Which, by the way, since I'm still in the ADD portion of the program, I say this all the time. I've said this more than once, but this Tu B'Shvat, I'll be making my Sudas Haida'ah, 11 years since I had my heart attack and bypass. And two of the doctors said that I should not have made it. So when I wake up every morning, I tell myself I'm in overtime. The fact that I'm alive is the greatest thing in the world. So you enjoy every day. When you understand that every day is extra, you know, you enjoy it better. I remember I was in a hotel and I was sleeping, and my father was pounding on the door to come to breakfast. I had no desire to come to breakfast because all they do in these hotels are eat. Now, to be fair, I was very good at that, you know, but I had already been, you know, to the tea room and the midnight bash, and I was okay. I didn't have to come to anything else. My father, it was like 7 o'clock in the morning. It's breakfast. It's breakfast. I said, Dad, I'm not hungry. He says, it's paid for. So Jews have a special approach, you know. People go out to eat. They're like, oh, I'm so stuffed. I couldn't eat another bite. He says, you want dessert? No, I'm so full. It's included. Okay, let's see the dessert menu. It's paid for. So when I started my NCSY chapter in Los Angeles, and it's Jacob in 1978. And then when I restarted the Long Island region of NCSY in 1979, I put a tremendous emphasis on paying dues. I would do everything I could to get kids to pay dues. And I would tell them, when you pay dues, you get discounts on this and discounts on that, and you get this for free and that for free. I wasn't making any money on it. So people said to me, why is this so important to you? I said, because once somebody pays their dues and you tell them, if you come to this, I'll give it to you half price or I give it to you for free, they're like, it's paid for. It's going to come already. It's paid for. So it's already included. So I have that already. But no, Baruch Hashem, you know, I'm sure that time will come. But yeah, Baruch Hashem, I celebrate every single day, and I think everybody should. The only difference between me and most people is they don't understand that you know, one day we're going to die, and we don't embrace that. So you know, when you have stared death in the face, and you realize that, tell the story. When my brother died, my mother was still alive, And anybody who would listen, she would say, why? Why did Jason die? Why did Jason die? He was so young. He had children to marry off. I would say to God, take me instead. Don't take Jay. Why did Jay die? Now, what do you say to a woman in her 80s who lost her son in his 60s? How do you explain that? Her bechor. And so no one knew what to answer. Now, I was after my bypass operation. I couldn't fly. So I called up to pay a shiva call. And my mother does it to me. Why? Why did Jason die? I said to God, take me. And I said, God doesn't want you. You're a cranky old lady. Jay's a lot of fun. He'd much rather have Jay. He doesn't want you. He'll get around to you one day, I'm assuming, but right now he doesn't want you. And she said, that's the first thing anyone says that makes any sense. One of my kids told me that, towards the end, she was in a lot of pain towards the end. And she said, I'm trying not to be so nasty so that God will take me. So I faced death and God said, nah, you stay here. I was like, but God, I'm ready to move on. No, you're not. Trust me. Just stay right here. Don't go anywhere. I'll get to you eventually. But right now, we're doing fine. Why don't you stay down there and annoy people in this world instead of coming to Olam Haba and just being a nuisance? I appreciate that. Anyway, so that's my very brief introduction. Yeah. What did I want to talk about this week? So we are in the weeks of Shovavim. For those of you who are unfamiliar with it, you might have seen, I live here in Yerushalayim, so you see posters, special tikkun for Shovavim. There are people, if you have a really good Jewish calendar, then you'll see, not the I.J. Morris. I don't even know if they still make that. But when I was growing up, I.J. Morris Funeral Home had a big schus that they used to send out to everybody, the I.J. Morris calendar. And people who had no shaykhs to Judaism had an I.J. Morris calendar. And they had the times for candle lighting. And when the holidays came out, it was a good thing. I'm sure it was a good advertising thing. And, I assume it made them very popular. From what I hear, people are dying to use their services. Anyway, but, this is taking a pretty dark turn this week, hasn't it? But, so it won't be on the I.J. Morris calendar. But if you have a fancy Jewish calendar, it'll point out on Shovavim, there are people who fast on Monday and Thursday. There are people who say special slichos on Monday and Thursday. People who do tikkunim, every Monday and Thursday during Shovavim. And it's a special time. Shovavim is an abbreviation for the parshios that we are in. Shmos, Ve'era, Bo, Bishalach, Yisro, and Mishpatim. Those weeks are called the weeks of Shovavim, and they're a special time of doing tikkun and improving yourself in certain areas in specific. I don't want to go too much. As it is, they already censor me on 24/6 because I'm too controversial. If you can imagine, I just received an email from somebody who just listens to me on 24/6, and they say, I don't know, a lot of your podcasts aren't up, and some of the things get there's only part of it there. And I said, I'm too controversial for 24/6. Some of my videos are up there with warning statements, that people shouldn't have to expose themselves to this type of late sonis and preetzis and apicursis and stuff. But some of them they let in, so I appreciate that. So I don't want to go into too much details because I at least I stand a chance of getting on this time. And I've told this story before, but it's one of my favorites, I got called from Rabbi Becker from the Aguda many years ago, inviting me to speak at the Aguda convention. And I said, aren't you afraid I'm going to say something controversial? And he says, well, we discussed this, so we're going to give you the women's shalashudas because none of the Rosh Yeshiva come to that. And we'll have you do the Sunday morning closing because they all leave Motzi Shabbos. I said, I was kidding. I didn't realize there was an actual meeting of how can we invite Orlofsky and minimize the damage. I've told this story a lot of times and I've never been invited back. I wonder if there's a correlation. But anyway, so let's just say the following. During the weeks of Shovavim, there is a minhag to go to shiurim in Taras HaMishpacha, because this is one of the areas we're supposed to be metakein, because these are the weeks of Golus and Geula. That's what we're reading about in these stories. And as you know, in Parshas Shmos, HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Moshe, I'm taking them out of Mitzrayim, and if you ask in what schus, to bring them to this mountain, Har Sinai, to give them the Torah. And that's why getting the Torah is an integral part of Yetzias Mitzrayim. So we go through Shmos and Yetzias Mitzrayim and Yisro and Mishpatim, which are, at the end of Mishpatim is the second part of Kabbalas HaTorah, and all of that together is called Yetzias Mitzrayim. And these are the weeks. And if you look sometimes, not all the Machzarim, but some of the Machzarim, when you say Musaf on Yantif, you'll see it begins, Umipnei Chato'enu. This Golus came about because of our sins, and there is a specific Yehirat Son that you say to ask forgiveness for particular Avera that causes Golus. Yeah? That brings us into Golus. Why that Avera and why Golus is for another discussion that I'll perhaps do in one of my online shiurim, because in my online shiurim I get to say all the stuff that I try not to say in public, on these public podcasts, which has, when I've said this in the past, people say, you mean there's stuff you don't say? Yeah, believe it or not, I actually self-censor. I know that's hard to believe because it seems like I say so many outrageous things, but I don't. Yeah. In fact, I probably mentioned this in the past, but there's nothing better than a Purim play. It's wonderful. You should always, if you have the schus to be parodied in a Purim play, watch it closely because you'll learn more about yourself than the nasty comments you get on a YouTube video, So one time a person was impersonating me or Dovid Purim play. And he was in the share, he's giving the share, he's doing a whole thing of that. And then he stops and he goes like this. And he comes back. And he did this a few times. And the guys were cracking up. And I had no idea what they were talking about. So I said, what is that? He goes, Rebbe, you do that all the time? I said, no, I don't. He says, okay, next time it happens, we'll tell you. So sure enough, I was in shir and I was doing, some sort of a shtick to be able to elucidate the point that the Gemara was making. As I mentioned at the beginning of this, there's a method to my madness, and I don't just stam tell jokes and stories. There's a purpose to it. In fact, story within a story. I used to give a parsha shir in seminary on Friday morning. And I'd always, girls were tired. We'd come in with these gigantic coffees and stuff. And, they still had their pajamas, they put their clothes over it, they were half asleep. So I'd always start with a joke, and then I would build up my questions. And I built my questions. At the end, I would throw it out to the girls to see what they would say. And towards the end of the year, one girl, a bright girl, she says, wait, I know the answer. It's in the opening joke. It's always in the opening joke. You start with this joke as if it has nothing to do with anything. And then in the end you say, and that's why, and you tie it back into the joke. And I was like, oh, there's a method to my madness. You discovered it. I had a girl in the Yerushalayim, a married lady. And she said to me, I said your shir over to my husband. I said, okay. She says, you don't understand, I can't remember shiurim. I've never told them over a shir. But I remember jokes and stories. And with you a shir, if you remember the jokes and stories, you can recreate the shir. So I said, oh, Baruch Hashem. So there is a method to my madness. Anyway, so I realized, they stopped me when I was doing it. I said, I realized why. Because I try to use the humor to develop the point, but I don't want it to turn into late sinus. I'm not telling jokes just for the sake of telling jokes. And that's why I always get stymied. It just happened to me the other day. Somebody came in, a friend of my son, and he was videoing whatever was going on. And he says, "Oh, Rabbi Orlofsky is here. Tell us a joke." So I don't usually, it's hard for me to remember jokes. I don't really, I say things over in a funny way. I have a certain, what Rav Mordechai Kornfeld from the Daf Yomi Institute told me once. They said, I really enjoy the things that you say, but you have this edge to you. I said, I know, that's why people listen to me. That was a different Purim play where my good friend Reb Mendel, who has sponsored episodes here in the past, he did me in a Purim play, and he did the usual, telling jokes, and then someone says, "Yeah, that's like this." He does me, and I go, "Ah, yeah? You think I like getting interrupted in the middle of a sentence?" So first of all, he got down my very refined Long Island accent, which is not easy to do. It's a very specific, yeah. I was like, my kids all do it to this day, yeah. Think I like getting interrupted in the middle of a sentence, So he says, but the attitude. And I said, what do you mean? That's why people listen. So there's the edge. He says, you have an edge. And I said, yeah, absolutely, But so I tried to do just enough that I think I'm illustrating my point, and then I stop. And that's what the staring off in the distance was, is I said, is this enough, or should I go a little longer? What do I need to do in order to keep people's interest? Because that's the sugarcoating on the medicine, that you want people to listen for this. And even then, I don't want it to be stam leitzanis. It's something that's there to be mavara, the point I'm trying to bring across. So, okay. So when it comes to Shovavim, there's a particular issue during this time that we're supposed to be metaken, we're supposed to be working on ourselves, and we're supposed to be doing tshuva. Now, the problem is, and this is always the problem, right? What are you supposed to be doing on Elul? Doing tshuva. What are you supposed to be doing during Aseres Mei Tshuva? Tshuva. What are you supposed to be doing from Yom Kippur till Hoshana Rabbah? Tshuva misimcha. What are you supposed to be doing from Shmini Atzeres until Chanukah according to the Hasidim? Doing tshuva. What are you supposed to be doing during the weeks of Shovavim? Tshuva. What are you supposed to be doing during Sfiras HaOmer? Tshuva. What are you supposed to be doing during the 3 weeks? Tshuva. After a while, you hardly have any time to do Averas. I'm so busy doing tshuva already. So the answer is not nuanced. You have to have nuance. You have to, they say the devil is in the details, but so is HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's in the details. Usher Wade, who was a Baptist minister and became an Orthodox Jew, he said that, he says, as a minister, I was wearing black and white, so become a chassid, it wasn't much of a transition, I could more or less keep the same, I just had to change the collar, But he said one of the things that inspired him is he was giving a sermon. And he said, we have to do the will of God. Do the will of God. The will of God! He's great, by the way, because he is from Virginia. So he's like that old Southern Baptist way of talking, will of God, And it's very good because he really tries to keep it under control. Every now and then he loses it. And it's a lot of fun. I had him once speaking in Dovid, and one of the guys asked him, at the time, one of the archbishops in France was in line to become the Pope. And he was actually a Jewish kid from the Holocaust who was put into a monastery, and he was really Jewish. So they said to him, this guy's in line to become the Pope. He says, yeah. He says, but he's really Jewish. He says, yeah. So why doesn't someone explain to him that he's a Jew and he shouldn't be a Catholic? And his eyes flashed. And a little bit of that old Baptist minister came back. And he said, are you kidding me? This man is in line to become one of the most powerful people in the world, to control billions of dollars and billions of people. And you want him to give that up for something like the truth? Anyway, he said one of the things that inspired him to become Jewish is he was preaching the will of God. You have to do the will of God. And a woman came over to me in the end and said, what is the will of God? And I suddenly realized I had no idea. Because that's not what Christianity does. Not by good works will you go by heaven. You have to just have, faith and let Jesus in your heart. Oh, just lost 24/6. Anyway, and let Jesus in your heart, and then you're going to, be able to, be saved, etc. So he says, so I took out that Bible they gave me back when I was in seminary, and I started reading, and I suddenly found that all the will of God is. It's in the Old Testament. Keep the Shabbos, keep kosher, help the poor, help the widow, help the orphan. I started reading, and I said, here's all the laws. Yeah. So it can't just be vague generalities. Be a nice person. I love people who say that. The most important thing is to be a nice person, be a good person. Right. But the devil's in the details. What's a good person? Right? As Ari Khan pointed out, 2 people walk into 2 hospital rooms. 2 people are in terrible pain and they're terminally ill. Both of them ask the person who walked into the room to pull the plug so they can die. One person does and one person doesn't, and they both walk out thinking that they're good people. There are demonstrations in favor of abortion. Yeah, they call it pro-choice, but it's pro-abortion. There are demonstrations in favor of abortion and against abortion. They call it pro-life, but it means they're anti-abortion. I don't like these make-believe names. You know what I mean? Just call it as it is. So people are protesting to forbid abortion, and people are protesting to allow abortion, and they both think they're good people. Everybody thinks they're good people. It's the details that make the difference. So, yeah, you do tshuva, but there's different nature of the tshuva that you're supposed to be doing. And during this time, it's specifically in the relationship between men and women that we're supposed to be focusing on. That's why they learn the halachas of Taras Mishpacha. That's why the tikkun is on the tikkun for a particular vera that has to do, with relations between men and women. These are the things that we're supposed to be focusing on this time. Why? Because Gullus, and Rav Tzadok HaKohen says this, that the Gemaras that describe the Churban and Gullus are in Gemara Gittin, because that's the definition of Gullus when a marriage fails. As the Gemara says, even the Mizbeach sheds tears when a marriage fails. It's a tragedy. It's a churban. And that's why Har Sinai, where we get the Torah, is described as a marriage. Yeah, the Egel is described as adultery, cheating in a marriage. And during this time, we're supposed to be establishing that relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that's why the learning to trust and all of the things that go on and what goes through. Har Sinai is compared to the wedding. I mentioned this in the Parsha in 5 last year on Parshas B'Shalach. And Parshas Bo, Zocharti la chesed nu'rayach avas klulasayach. We follow Hashem into the midbar like a kala. So I brought a number of examples how B'Shalach is all about the engagement. And someone said to me, well, if Bo is, agreeing to get married and B'Shalach is the engagement and Yisro is the marriage, that makes sense because the Esher Makos are the dating. You know what I'm saying? That's the 10 plagues, that's dating. And as somebody said to me once, anybody who tells you the engagement is the best part, you know that marriage is in trouble. No, that shouldn't be the best part. Being married should be the best part. Wouldn't it be nice if we were married and we could, like that was the Beach Boys, could wake up every day together, that would be the best. So wouldn't it be nice if we were engaged and we saw each other on occasion and we couldn't be together? And that would be the best part. Yeah, no, that wouldn't make such a great song. That's kind of sad. So this is the time that we're supposed to be developing that relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu and being metaken the lack of fidelity is a good word. Yeah, it says a lot without getting me into trouble. Yeah, that we should have loyalty to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, be honest to the relationship, stand by your man. Right? Nothing you can say is going to take me away from my God. Right? That's what it is. We're a one God people. Yeah, all of our efforts is on HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that's why it says by Avodah Zarah, "Liznais achareihem." It's compared to a man who runs around with a bunch of different women. Not us. That's polytheism. That's believing in a bunch of gods. Not us. We're a one God people. Yeah, Torah echad v'shemcha echad umika amcha Yisrael goy echad ba'aretz. We're one. You're one. We're one together. And all of us are united. And it's dafka during these parshios, which, when you read the parshios, there's a certain bittersweet element to it. Yes, it ends. Luckily, we stop Shovim before we get to Kisisa, but it ends on a positive note. We come to Har Sinai, we get the Torah, we become God's people, we get married to Hashem. But it really starts in the darkness and all of the problems and the difficulties, and we need to build our way out of that. And that's what this period of time is all about, for us to be able to develop that relationship. If you want more on that topic, you can go back and watch my videos on dating and marriage, where I give more details on how to develop that relationship. And again, I say this much shorter in the Parsha in 5 on B'Shalach last year. So those are Mara Makomos. I'm giving you work to do now. I'm giving you prep. So in Mitzvah Hashem, we will use this time to be metaking ourselves. Those of you who fast, those of you who go to the Tikkun Kloli, all of those things like that, more power to you. For the rest of us, simple folk, let's just have at least the consciousness during this time to be able to have a sense of honesty, loyalty, fidelity in our relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that brings us to the question and answer portion of our program. And the question and answer is sponsored, in fact, by our studio audience, who are a little late on their cue, but that's fine. By Zev and Chaya Wiener, in honor of their daughter Rachel Leah's Bas Mitzvah. And Kol Kavod, because Bas Mitzvah is a time where a young lady recognizes the fact that she's becoming an adult member of Klal Yisrael, and she has her responsibilities. I did an entire podcast on the concept of bar mitzvah. Most of those concepts will apply to a bas mitzvah too. It's just in pink. And you can go back and watch that podcast. But the idea of becoming an adult is a tremendous thing. And it's strange because we live in a society that works to keep people not just childlike, but infantile. The Gemara says that a father is obligated. It's a bad thing if he doesn't support his son until his son is old enough to make it on his own. How old is that? 5. If he's a little slow, 6. When I say this to people, they are horrified. Says, really? Okay, a 6-year-old, you bring him in? There was a scene like this in David Copperfield, where basically he says, okay, you're spoken for, and gets him some job in a factory and sends him off, And, that's it. At 6, you say, okay, son, it's time for you to make it on your own, get out there in the big bad world. He says, surely it's changed today. I said, yeah, today it's in the 40s. And that's because you're basically waiting for your dad to die so you can get the inheritance. You understand? So that's what's going to keep you going. So, so in any event, the point is that when a person becomes an adult and assumes a sense of responsibility for Klal Yisrael, that means a tremendous thing, tremendous simcha. And boys tend to do this today more ostentatiously than girls do. That's because men are in general external. Men have to go to a minyan. They have to daven together. It's team sports. Everyone yells, yay, shvei, rabba, And girls have no obligation. We learn the laws of tefillah from Chana, who sits in the Mishkan by herself, talking to herself. And Eli's like, what's this? What's she do? She must be drunk. Why isn't she yelling like a man does? Why isn't she chanting, doing a thing, sitting there quietly talking to herself? You know what I mean? Which, by the way, is something you see very often with women. If you ever watch, they're very often just sitting there going like this, having these internal conversations. Men don't. Yeah, we've talked about this many times. As Jerry Seinfeld says, I guess you women are wondering what we men are really thinking. Nothing. Anyway, so big mazel tov. And she chose to celebrate her bas mitzvah by coming to Eretz Yisrael. And she's only here for a week to be able to see the most important things. So, of course, she came to watch the filming of the Rabbi Orlofsky show, because what better thing could there be to celebrate becoming a member of Klal Yisrael in your fullest sense than to come and participate in the Rabbi Orlofsky show. So welcome and thank you. And you should go mechayel and just have simchas in your life. Okay, and now we come to the questions by Yehuda Kravitz. Is it permissible to destroy a cake in order to get a cute picture or a child on a child's first birthday? Okay. Luckily, most of my kids don't watch this. The last thing I want to do is criticize my children. Yeah. That's not who I am. Yeah. I used to write a column in Chinuch in the Hamodia, and I stopped after a while. There's a number of reasons I stopped, but the answer that I give people is, I said, because I don't have to write columns anymore, I can sum it up like this. Don't say 90% of what you want to say. Yeah, because 90% of what parents say are negative, and 10% is positive. And besides, they're not listening to you anyway. They just say the positive. So I don't mean to criticize. Yeah, I'm of course, even-tempered and good-natured, who you never hear complain, who has the milk of human kindness by the quart in every vein. Anyway, so I'd never say anything unpleasant. Yeah, but I think it's Baltashkas Diraisa. I don't get it. So somebody said to me, well, we did it and then we ate the cake. Okay, that's just disgusting. I at least can understand it. Why? Because I would also. In fact, there was this famous scene in Seinfeld where George was at this new girl's house who was, dating, and somebody had threw out half of an eclair. And he was like, well, that looks perfectly good. And he pulls it out of the garbage and eating it. And the mother comes in. And it was like, a horrible scene, and he's eating out of the garbage, And he tells it over to Jerry. And Jerry says, yeah, I would say that's the dividing point between a regular guy and a bum when you start eating out of a garbage can. So he was interviewed once. And he says, the most comments I get is on that scene. He says, don't worry. The garbage can was completely clean. The eclair had not been eaten by anybody. Trust me, that garbage can was cleaner than anything in your house. But everyone was horrified that I ate it out of that. So after a 1-year-old, and I'm going to get this right out there. Most 1-year-olds are not toilet trained. and their level of personal hygiene is not very high. And the Gemara speaks about a tinok who likes to play around in the garbage, you know what I mean? And that they're automatically tameh because they're always playing with, like, you know, dead things and disgusting stuff. And in the time of the Gemara, in fact, you know, you've heard the expression psik reisha v'lo yamus. You know, if I say I just want the chicken head, but I don't want the chicken to die, so you can't say that because that's a psik reisha. Of course it's going to happen. So the Gemara says, why exactly do you want to cut off the chicken head? And to give it to a kid to play with. That is the joy of choice, is a dead chicken head. A little kid will find every dead frog, dead mouse. They're just drawn to it like a magnet, you know. So here you have this 1-year-old, and he's sticking his little grimy hands in this cake. And then you say, okay, everyone, who wants a piece? But okay. If you know, at least then you have something to say. There was a video with Lipa Schmelza, where the beginning of the video is this guy is running into a store and he bangs into somebody and knocks over their eggs, and you see their eggs broken on the ground. And someone said, I don't understand, for the sake of a video, you're allowed to do Bal Tashchis? I never saw the answer to it. I assume, of course, they were expired eggs. I wouldn't be choshed that he would be over Bal Tashchis. But, you know, but you see people do things and you know, you wonder what they're doing, you know. I remember in the Frum play, it was just before Y2K, and then all the computers are going to come down. So this guy comes out with a laptop, and he's like tapping. He goes, I've come up with a solution to Y2K. And he takes it and he throws it, you know, on the other side of the stage. You know, it was funny. I said to him, you just threw the laptop over there? He goes, it was broken. Don't worry about it. And I remember Rabbi Reisman, he was talking about the pasuk in Shmuel where Nasan Hanavi was giving Dovid Mussar about Bathsheba, and he brings a mashal about this guy who all he had was a sheep. He says, and he would keep the sheep on his lap and he would eat off of his own table. So he says, you're not allowed to serve people food to animals. And that became the entire basis of the shir. That was the great thing about Rabbi Reisman's Navi shir, is he starts with some little point that related to the pasuk, and he goes off in all directions. It's a lot of fun. And although his is very well structured, I just have ADD. But so he said there was a picture of the Levi Eliyahu giving a bowl of milk to a cat. And there was a whole discussion, is it Bal Tashchis, is it not, etc. But as far as I can tell, this is just straight Bal Tashchis, and I don't understand it. Lo zachisi lo havin. And here's a short question from someone who does not watch the entire 7 years of the Rabbi Orlofsky show. And there are people who have discovered the show and they go back and start watching it from the beginning and watch 7 years of me. And it's bad enough that I have to listen to myself for 7 years. How other people do this is amazing to me, but okay. Although I have to say that if I had to listen to any shir for 7 years, I'd rather listen to me. So by Anonymous, who sings your catchy theme song? We love listening to it. Okay, you got to go and look this up. I have an episode where I introduce the theme song. Now, I don't know on Torah anytime, but because I can't get my stats there. But on YouTube, they have a thing of the most watched videos. And among my most watched videos, besides those about Christianity, are the ones with singers in them. So the ones with the Waterbury Boys singing, the one with Ari Goldwag, the one with Rabbi Fogelgarn, originally from Australia. Now he's in Florida. A little shout out. He had his Australian boys singing his Shabbos song that he wrote. So they're among my most popular. And Nissim Black, all the ones where I had singers on. And so the one with Lenny Solomon who is a good friend of mine back from the old days, and speaking about, his experience with Jewish music and Shlach rock and things like that, And he said, as a sort of throwaway line, you know what? You really need a theme song. I'm going to write you a theme song. Okay. But, I didn't put much credence in it, but he took it seriously. And so he wrote a song, and he sent it in, with him playing the piano, singing this theme song, which was composed and sung by Lenny Solomon. And then producer Michael, who always has a penchant for music, went down and got people to do orchestration and dubbed it in and made an entire music video out of it. If you go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com, I'm pretty sure you can download the song and the music video. If not, you'll just have to do a search on it for the episode where we introduced the Rabbi Orlofsky theme song. And shout out to Lenny Solomon, who wrote the theme song. It is unbelievably catchy. I find myself singing it sometimes also, although I can't always remember all the words. But the rest of it is pretty good. So that's where the theme song comes from. And definitely you can look up the episode and see the whole music video. And in fact, when Michael played it, he filmed my reaction to it. And I just have to say that this brought it to a whole new level. And particularly for me, because my mom had a lot of pet phrases, and whenever I would complain about something, she would say to me, "Oh, that's your new theme song?" I just wish she had lived long enough that I could have said, "No, Mom, I have my own theme song." And so, as we end the podcast, we'll, of course, end as we always do with Lenny Solomon's greatest hit. I mean, some of his songs were good, but this one is his greatest hit, the Rabbi Orlofsky theme song to the show. Like I say, somebody told me that they downloaded it as the ringer on their phone, and it starts to play. This way, all the Rabbi Orlofsky crazies can gather together when they hear the thing. It's like a Moranos listening to the shofar during a concert, on Rosh Hashanah. But that's the idea, to be able to have that. So that's it for this episode. Till next time. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. You can find out more about the show on my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can sponsor an episode. You can sponsor a question and answer. You can sponsor a Parsha in 5. You can sign up for one of our online shiurim. You can ask a question. You can make a comment. And that's it. Until next time, I am Dovid Orlofsky, and this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.